Good evening, everyone, and welcome to those who are present and also those who are watching it online at home. If members can remember to switch on their mics because the meeting is being webcast, and if you don't switch your mics on, nobody will hear what you're saying on the webcast. Just a quick safety announcement. There are no scheduled fire alarms, so if one goes off, it is for real. In which case, I'd suggest that those in the chamber leg it in either that door or that door, both of which are fire exits. If there's smoke behind one of the doors, go for the other one. Introductions. I am Councillor Vicky Glover-Ward. I'm the chair of this meeting. Ben?
Good evening, I'm Ben Crystal. I'm the leader of the East Herts Council.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Joe Demont. I'm Executive Member for Corporate Services.
Claire?
Good evening, I'm Claire Syme. I'm the Assistant Director for Place Shaping.
Hi, I'm Richard Crutchley. I'm the team leader for the planning policy team.
Good evening, I'm Kay Mead. I'm a Principal Planning Officer in the Planning Policy team.
Good evening, I'm Anthony Bateman and I'm an Assistant Planning Policy Officer.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maria Hennessy, a Principal Planner in the Policy team.
Good evening, I'm Laura Guy, a Principal Planning Policy Officer.
Thank you. Committee Support Officer, do we have any apologies for absence?
None, Chair, thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the Chair's announcement, I would just like to note that we have received one representation this afternoon from the Rye House Action Group. Officers are reviewing the representation and will take appropriate action accordingly. So item 3, declarations of interest. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Thank you. In a slight change to the published agenda, we aren't going to approve the minutes and vote on them on the grounds that they were signed, they were done in 2017, and there's been a significant change in administration, and those on the panel who can vote were not present at the meeting. So we are just going to note the minutes and we will go from there. Yes, Councillor Buckmaster, but can you put your mic on, please?
I'll do that. Thank you, Chairman. It's just in terms of those present, where it says G. Jones, it would have been Jeff Williamson. So just for the record, it was he who was there. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And hopefully we can amend those minutes accordingly after we've noted them. Thank you. Okay, coming on to the first item of business. The local plan timetable and notice of intention to commence the local plan preparation, which is in the agenda pack from pages 13 to 29. I'm going to ask Claire Syme, who is the Assistant Director for Place Shaping, to present the report.
Thank you very much. So East Herts Council has the statutory duty to prepare and maintain an up-to-date local plan to guide future development in the district. The local plan is central to setting the spatial strategy for East Herts, identifying land for development and protection, and establishing planning policies to support sustainable growth, infrastructure delivery, environmental protection, and community well-being. In November 2025, the government announced a new plan-making system intended to deliver local plans more quickly, consistently, and transparently. The regulations implementing this system came into force on the 25th of March. A key feature of the reforms is the introduction of a statutory 30-month timetable for preparing and adopting local plans, supported by a series of defined gateway assessments to ensure plans are properly prepared and sound. This report represents the first formal step in implementing the new plan-making framework for East Herts. It initiates the required getting ready phase that must be completed before the 30-month period can commence. As part of this preparatory stage, local planning authorities are required to publish a local plan timetable and a notice of intention to commence local plan preparation, both of which are prescribed requirements. Accordingly, the report seeks approval to publish the East Herts local plan timetable, which sets out the proposed stages, milestones and key decision points for preparing the new local plan. The timetable provides transparency for members, communities and stakeholders, establishes a clear programme for managing resources, evidence and consultation, and is a prerequisite for progression through Gateway 1. The report also seeks approval to publish the statutory notice of intention to commence local plan preparation. The notice formally signals the start of the local plan process, identifies the plan area, confirms the anticipated timing of Gateway 1, and explains how stakeholders can access information and engage. National guidance requires the notice to be published before or at the same time as the first formal stage of public engagement. This report should therefore be read alongside the accompanying local plan scoping consultation report, which sets out how early engagement will be undertaken to identify the key issues, challenges and priorities for the new local plan. Together, the two reports provide clarity on both the statutory requirements and the immediate next steps in the plan-making process. Members will of course be aware that local government reorganisation in Hertfordshire remains subject to government decision. While the outcome is currently uncertain, the government is clear that councils should continue to progress local plans. Proceeding with the preparation of the East Herts local plan will ensure an up-to-date and robust planning framework remains in place and will provide a strong evidence base to support future governance or plan-making arrangements. This report is presented to this panel for scrutiny and comment prior to referral to the Executive and subsequently to Council for approval in accordance with the Council's constitutional arrangements. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Director for Place Shaping. And I'd just like to say thank you for all the hard work in getting us to this point, because it seems to have been a long time coming to actually start, hopefully start the first step on the road to reviewing our local plan. So the way that this works, as we haven't done it before, is first of all, I come to the DPEP members on the panel to ask for comments, questions or anything else, and then I open it up to the floor of councillors for any questions, etc. So panel, any questions, comments? Yes, Councillor Dumont.
Thank you very much. So Claire already mentioned it, that regardless of LGR, we're to press ahead. All local authorities are to press ahead. I wonder if you could just go a little bit deeper into that, to the extent you can, that you do know, because there's a lot of unknowns here. But post LGR, just describe how this will feed into the new authority, and people are kind of interested in why are we still doing this. You know, so you get the gist of my question.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the government is looking at effectively transitional arrangements. So the stage that our plan is at, I think there will be an expectation that that plan is taken on into the new authority and progressed in that respect.
So I suppose, I mean, the council's going to change, but the land's staying where it is. It's not moving. So if hypothetically speaking, there is a site that is recommended or it's approved within the plan, the likelihood it will continue, that will continue in and still be the case that land will still be built on when the new authority is established. Is that the gist of?
Yes, that would be my understanding. So our authorities adjacent to us are progressing plans in the same way. So North Herts and Stevenage in particular. So we are in discussion with them as our officers in terms of sort of evidence base. And ensuring that we're taking a consistent approach to plan making. But yes, there will be separate plans in place to start with once we get to the point of the new authority.
And probably worth noting, I know I've mentioned it before, but there is HIP, which is the Hertfordshire Infrastructure Planning Partnership, which is all 10 districts and county, where matters of plan making and also updates on development management are shared on a quarterly basis. So we do liaise via that as well.
Thanks very much.
Yes, Councillor Crystal.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, echo your thanks to officers. This is, just starting. This is a huge piece of work, and so a huge thank you. To a question and a sort of request. The question is, what happens if? Do we know what happens if we get to 30 months out and we haven't finished? Does it stop dead? Does it go back to the beginning? Would you just go back to your previous steps? Do we know?
So we're required to keep the timetable constantly under review. So I think we will be reviewing that pretty much every month as we progress through that process. There are lots of things that could get in the way. We don't know how many representations we're going to receive at any particular point for a consultation. We're reliant on the availability of inspectors from PINS, for example. So I think there are unknowns that could slow that timetable down. And so I think we are simply going to have to review. I don't think we have to, I don't think it's quite like Monopoly that you have to go right back to the beginning. I think we will carry on with our direction of travel. And yeah, we'll be obviously doing everything we can to maintain the timetable that we've hoping to agree.
One second request. I suppose not everyone, probably there are people listening, hopefully, and they may not have gone through the 175 pages of the agenda tonight. And I just wondered whether it would be possible just for you, or just to sort of highlight the indicative start and ends of the periods in the plan when there's sort of public consultation input. I think there are 3 or possibly 2. I kind of went through it. I just wonder whether you could highlight them just so we're absolutely clear when kind of residents associations and members of the public can sort of put views in, if that's possible.
I think before I do that, just to reassure everybody who will be on our mailing list, our database, is that we will be sending out regular newsletters. So there will be plenty of information available in terms of when those consultation will take place. But you're absolutely right. There are 3 consultations that are prescribed in the regulations. The first consultation, Richard will tell us a little bit more about in due course, as that's the second paper from tonight. So that's our scoping consultation. And we're looking to commence that on June the 11th, and that will run to July the 12th? July the 10th, sorry, almost right. So there will be a 4-week period, and that is very much about asking our community, what the new local plan should include and how best we should be engaging with our communities. Our second consultation is currently planned for next February, and that is plan content and evidence consultation. So again, it won't be a final plan, but it will be setting out a little bit more detail in terms of the content and the evidence that has informed that content. And then you'll have a final plan, so our proposed local plan consultation. At the moment, we're looking at February 2028 for that consultation. So both that consultation and the plan content will both run for 6 weeks. And again, that's set out in regulations. Thank you.
So opening up to the floor, any questions? Yes, Councillor Buckmaster Eric.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following on from Ben's question and testing my assumption, I was looking through Appendix A and the regulation numbers. So I'm assuming, as this is a review of the district plan, we got to Regulation 19, submitting to the examination for the examination in public. And these are additional stages following on from that, which is why we get to, I think, Regulation 21 and then further on from that. So is that correct?
Not quite. So we have a new plan making system, and we have a new set of regulations. So we're preparing a new plan. There is no longer a regulation 18 or a regulation 19. So the new numbers are as set out in the timetable, and we'll be referring to, it'll become, I suppose, lingo in due course, the new regulation. I'd have to check what number it is. 23, yes. Yeah, so it's not linked to previous regulation or regulation 18 or 19. It's a new set of regulations and a new plan that we're starting from scratch effectively.
Councillor Hoskin.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it's building on Ben's point earlier. It's about the clarity for residents. And with due respect, the timetable is not enormously clear. It's very baked in with all the jargon and you know, necessarily for this forum. So I'd like to see a very simplified timetable. And within that timetable, I guess I'd like some insight now into, I mean, the thing that residents like to see or dread to see is a plan with a red splodge on it saying, oh, crikey, that's in my back garden. That's the site that I'm worried about. When does that first become visible? We've had the call for sites. There'll be other rounds, I anticipate, until that's finalised. But when do people get a first opportunity to be able to say, I've got a thing about that site that's planned for that location? Is it not until February 28th, or is it before then?
While officers debate, I can confirm we're already working on a more graphical and easy to understand item for the website that will give all the stages.
Sorry, we're grappling with a new system and a new way of presenting information as well. So this hasn't been done before. So I think we anticipate, so the consultation next February, so notice of plan content and evidence consultation. So we will see information coming through that. That will be informed by the call for sites, the Greenbelt assessment. And so it's likely that we could see strategy options, but it may not go as detailed as red lines on plans in terms of those final allocations. But those will obviously definitely follow in the notice to propose local plan consultation, which will be February 2028.
And so will the call for sites be refined before it's published? In other words, some may drop off, some may not be suitable, some will be considered and then finalised, and those are the ones that will be presented in February, do you think?
Yeah, so we're looking to present the call for sites or the strategic housing land availability assessment, the SHLA, in October. And alongside that will be potential strategy options, and that will be informed by some of the key evidence-based documents that we're working on. So, for example, our Greenbelt assessment. So you will begin to see some of those sites falling away, and that's through our initial assessment of that. But it will ultimately be the strategy that potentially determines those sites that will get allocated. You think with the current district plan, we had, again, over 280 sites submitted through the call for sites, and that plan allocated 21 sites. So there's quite a lot of work to go through in terms of sieving those sites to ensure that we get the most appropriate allocations.
And just to be clear, and shout at me if I'm incorrect, the SHLA marks, if you like, each of the sites in accordance with whether they're viable for development or not, and then it will inform which ones may or may not get selected.
That's part of the picture, yes. Yeah. So we'll be looking at the deliverability of those sites. Yeah.
Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you again, Chairman. Just on those points, so there may be sites that come forward, applications made between now and the SHLA. Will officers be referring to what they can currently see in the evidence base of the SHLA, or will they just be tested currently as they are on tilted balance without a 5-year housing supply?
Just to clarify, you're talking about planning applications, not further calls coming, further sites coming through the call for sites. Right, okay.
So yes, obviously we are seeing speculative applications coming forward, which the council is considering. Some of those have been submitted through the call for sites, but once an application has been submitted, then obviously the council needs to respond to that. So some may jump ahead in that respect and go through the decision-making process, and we would take account of that position through the SHLA as well.
Councillor Crystal.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, the do we know? Has the government defined the complete process, or could the government still change something within 30 months? I know, I'm hoping they don't. But are there sort of unknowns? And you may not know the answer, I guess. But as far as you know, do you think you know pretty much everything that you need to know at this stage?
I think we probably do. That the regulations are quite vague in places. There's the promise of additional information and templates, and some of those have come through, some of them haven't. But there is a completely new system, so it is a completely different way of working. And obviously, we are working across our networks and colleagues from other authorities to discuss the best way forward. And I think they'll be learning as we go through the process.
There's a little bit to that. MHCLG seem to be working on the detail at the beginning of the 30-month process. Obviously, all authorities are at this stage now. Nobody's done it before. So they are producing templates and advice as they go. They're a little bit ahead of where we actually are, where most authorities are. And I expect that as we go through the 30 months, we'll see more and more advice and guidance and case studies and experience starting to shape the way things go. But I think the regulations cover the whole 30-month period. They are vague in places. They do need a bit more detail, but I'm sure we'll get that as we go through. I don't expect any surprises. It'll just be further detail on what's there already.
So just in time project management. Councillor Stowe.
Yes, thank you. Observation really more than anything else is that Claire will remember a meeting she went to on the last district plan in a particular village hall, and she had a very hard time. So can I suggest that when the teams go out on these consultations, there's at least 2 or 3 people?
Thank you. Any further questions on this item on the agenda? Then I would invite the panel to propose and/or second.
I'm happy to propose.
I'm happy to second.
Thank you. So those in favour? And I won't be taking any more commentary on those because we've voted. So local plan scoping consultation, which is item 6 on the agenda, which is on pages 30 to 52. I'm going to ask Richard Crutchley, who is the team leader of planning policy, to present this report.
Thank you, Chair. Just a reminder, East Herts Council has a statutory duty to produce the East Herts local plan, and the government published the details of the new 30-month plan making system in November 2025 with regulations that were implemented on the 25th of March 2026. So after giving notice and publishing the local plan timetable, the scoping consultation is the 3rd stage in the plan making process. The way it is intended to run is defined through the government's regulations. This item seeks to agree the scoping consultation document, engagement upon it, and its distribution in the community to seek comments. So what are the consultation requirements and proposals? The scoping consultation is a key part of the getting ready period undertaken within the 4-month period prior to the formal 30-month timeline for completing the local plan. The regulations specify both the bodies to be invited to make representations during the scoping consultation and the matters about which representation should be made. They do not specify the length of the time that the scoping consultation should progress for, other than it being between the time that the notice is given and plan making is formally commenced 4 months later, although it must be at least 21 days. The aim of the scoping consultation is to provide meaningful early engagement in the plan making process from invited groups and members of the community, including local residents. Representations can be made about matters relevant to the preparation of the local plan, including what the plan should contain, and how the authority should engage with stakeholders and the community in the preparation of the plan. Our consultation is intended to run for 4 weeks between June the 11th and July the 10th, 2026. The consultation document is attached at Appendix A. The consultation should be strategic and at a high level, striking a balance between engaging as wide an audience as possible and encouraging constructive, focused feedback that will meaningfully inform the next stages of plan making, while avoiding disproportionate administrative burdens associated with logging, analysing and responding to representations. To this end, the scoping consultation document, which has been prepared, has 14 questions, aiming to deliver short, focused responses about the plan, having set out beforehand why the plan is being made and the purpose of the consultation, the challenges and opportunities of the district that are expected to be addressed within the plan, a proposed vision statement, the ways in which the Council considers engagement can be conducted with respect to the plan, and the requirement to undertake a sustainability appraisal, strategic environmental and a strategic environmental assessment. The SA and SEA, as they are known, will be discussed as part of the next item on this agenda. The scoping consultation will provide information from the community on their priorities for the local plan. This will inform the next stages of plan making set out in the timetable, which will be the formal consultation we've already discussed in February. A report on the scoping consultation will be prepared prior to the next formal engagement on the plan in early 2027. We've been working with the corporate comms team to develop a series of forums and messages around the scoping consultation. This will include social media, a press release, a newsletter to those signed up to the planning policy page on the Council's website, and an online portal to drive responses. The recommendations in the report seek to make the consultation document available to stakeholders and the wider community for the prescribed period between June the 11th and July the 10th via a range of means, and to report back at a later stage of the plan making process prior to the first formal consultation stage in early 2027.
Thank you, Team Leader. And thank you for the work on putting this one together, because I know it's taken a few iterations. So panel, any comments, questions? Councillor Crystal.
Yes, thanks very much. Yeah, it's I understand that getting the balance of the questions is incredibly difficult, and obviously you've put a lot of work in to try and hit the right level of as you say, sort of high level but detail, because it could go horribly wrong with vast amounts of very detailed questions. So yeah, and I think this looks good. I'm sure people will criticize it. I think that's inevitable part of consultations. But I think, to me, this looks to be sensibly pitched. And I suppose the other part is how we do the consultations, how they're, the social media versus in person versus kind of online. That obviously will be a really important part. And yeah, obviously you are thinking about that very carefully, and I would urge you obviously to do that, because that's the critical part, and it will be for every consultation, obviously. But no, so beyond that, I've got no questions. But yeah, thanks again.
Councillor Dumont.
Yeah, I suppose no real questions here. It's just maybe just to highlight the role that members can play as well in liaising with their residents. This is, we're producing the plan. This is really our residents' plan, the people that live in the district. Are we going to have direct communication with the parish councils? I presume they're on mailing lists, and we want to make sure that they are fully informed.
Yes, I mentioned the regulations set out who we should consult, and the way it does that is by defining a number of specific consultees. Government agencies, neighbouring local authorities, parish councils are in that, and general consultation bodies, which are quite broad. you could almost interpret it as everybody. You know, businesses that operate in the district, for instance, is one of the general consultation bodies. So it's a lot of people. We're taking the view that we will go to the specific consultees and everybody who is on our current database. So we're refreshing the database at the moment because obviously it was collected for the previous district plan. We're going to make sure that the contacts on the database are clean and still want to be involved by sending them out an opt-in email in due course, re-establishing our database and sending the information on the local plan out to the new database alongside all of the specific and general consultation bodies that we have to go out to. So that will include parish councils. We're also planning to hold a parish and town council forum at the beginning of the consultation period, so probably June 11th.
Good.
June 11th.
That's good. Just one point of interest. It mentions about AI generated responses are something that we're now going to expect to receive. I don't know if that means we're going to have AI generated evaluations of those as well, or use those tools if we're getting that huge volume coming in. What do we kind of expect that? It's quite something quite new and not happened before.
Yeah.
So it's mentioned. So are we expecting a lot more technical responses now because people can use AI to assist them?
I don't know what we're actually expecting. There are stories about planning applications and plans receiving representations that are being generated by AI. It's something that we've raised with our IT and comms colleagues as to how to deal with it. We will get them. There is a circular conversation as well about whether you deal with AI comments with AI, and that's, I don't know, it's down the wormhole. It's just to flag it up, really. We will see what happens. As the report said, and as Councillor Crystal mentioned, we want to try and strike the balance between constructive comments. I mean, there's no policies and allocations within the scoping consultation. It's a deliberately high level. So we're not expecting comments on detailed issues about sites and things. We want general comments about the direction of the plan and whether the topics that we cover in the scoping consultation document are about right and what's important to people. It may be we get AI comments. We're going to have to see as we go along, I think. We will be using we have a consultation database tool package. A lot of those are starting to incorporate AI themselves as a way of assisting analysis and organisation of responses. We also have to see how that works as well. That's been tested and cleared by our IT team in terms of where the AI is and how it works, and what data it's using and those sorts of things. So we're confident in the AI that we have within our software, but it's an area that we will start to understand more when we start getting comments.
Very briefly, I think people, as long as people are acting in good faith and there are tools that help them understand vast amount of documents and complicated regulations, if it's in good faith, then it's a good thing, I think.
I think it's we have to see what we get, and if we get thousands and thousands of bot-based comments that are unhelpful, shall we say, then that would be a different method of dealing with it. As if we get 10, let's say, that are genuinely well meant and somebody's used AI just to phrase up what they wanted to say, because it is about what the intention is behind using the AI, I think. Any questions from the floor? Councillor Buckmaster Eric.
Thank you, Chairman. Just looking at some of the questions, question 1 quite rightly is very open, so it gives people the ability to say what the challenges and opportunities are. Would you expect things more than just housing supply? We've had planning applications come in for solar farms, data centres seem to be on the rise. So I just wondered whether you would expect from certain stakeholders to be talking about those in the response. Thank you, Chairman.
Absolutely.
You may have noticed we've got various bits on employment studies that are on the end of this agenda. Yes, we're expecting to get commentary on everything, not just housing, but normally I think we probably get more comments on housing than we will do on the rest of it. Any other questions? Okay. So then I would like to ask for a proposer and seconder for the motion that council via the executive be advised that A, subject to the publication of the notice to commence local plan preparation and the local plan timetable, the East Herts local plan scoping consultation document, which is at Appendix A, is made available to relevant stakeholders and the wider community to begin a discussion about the district's new local plan and to seek comments in accord with the regulations. B, that engagement on the scoping consultation document should commence, taking place between June the 11th and July the 10th, 2026, through a range of different forums, including online on the council's website, and any minor amendments required to the content of the scoping consultation document prior to the consultation period be delegated to the Director of Place in consultation with me, the Executive Member for Planning and Growth. And finally, that a further report detailing any feedback is prepared for Executive following engagement with the intention of informing the local plan.
I think we're going to take it in turn, so I'm going to propose this.
Thank you, Councillor Dumont. Thank you. Those for the motion? Carried unanimously. Thank you. So on to item 7, which is the local plan sustainability appraisal known as the SA, and the strategic environmental assessment, which is known as the SEA, scoping report, which is on pages 53 to 183. If I can call on Maria Hennessy, the Principal Planning Policy Officer, to present the report.
Thank you. You've done me a job of describing what the acronyms are, so I'll go from there. So as Councillor Gloverwood said, the sustainability appraisal, which is known as an SA, and a strategic environmental assessment, which is known as an SEA, are processes that are separate to the local plan process. However, they are required to be undertaken alongside the preparation of the plan. An SA is required through Section 19 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004. And the role of an SA is to promote sustainable development by assessing the extent to which the emerging plan, when tested against reasonable alternatives, will help to achieve relevant environmental, economic and social objectives. The process provides an opportunity to consider how the plan can contribute to improvements to environmental, social and economic conditions, as well as identifying and mitigating any potential adverse effects that the plan may have. The SEA process, on the other hand, is separate to the SA and is a requirement of the Environmental Assessment of Plans and Programmes Regulations 2004. This is more commonly known as the SEA regulations. An SEA focuses solely on the environmental impacts of a plan and the likely significant effects that such plan may have on the environment. As an SA assesses environmental impacts, it is therefore encompasses the requirements of the SEA regulations, and both processes are prepared within one report. So as stated in the relevant regulations and national guidance, an SA and SEA should identify any relevant plans, policies and programmes that may impact the plan area. So this can include more local or regional plans, such as the local transport plan, or at an international level, programmes such as the Kyoto Protocol and UN Sustainable Development Goals. These can be found in the appendix of the scoping document. The SA and SEA should also identify the baseline conditions of the area, such as population characteristics or greenhouse gas emissions, for example. It should also identify future trends and what the likely situation may be like without the implementation of the local plan. Lastly, all of this information leads to a number of SA and SEA objectives which create a framework that will be used to test the policies and site options in the local plan as it emerges. The scoping document should consider social, environmental and economic issues. And there is a list of particular environmental criteria that need to be assessed in accordance with the SEA regulations. These are listed in table 1.1 of the scoping document. The scoping document is then broken down into the relevant topic areas and assessed in the different chapters. It's worth noting that the SA and SCA process is iterative, and therefore when new evidence emerges through the local plan process, the baseline information will be updated where relevant at the next stages. So it's just worth noting that since the publication of the SA and SCA with this document, a few changes have been proposed in consultation with the executive member for planning, and these are largely to table 11.2, which has the SA and SCA framework. So this includes a number of typical indicators that could be used to assess policies against the objectives when you go to test it. And I'll just summarise what these changes are. So this includes testing net zero in new housing and developments in line with the Council's climate emergency route map actions. In relation to conserving and enhancing the natural environment, including new indicators that relate to biodiversity corridors, increasing biodiversity on sites, and the local nature recovery strategy. In relation to climate change and flooding objectives, there are new potential indicators that will include building standards relating to heat and ventilation, tree planting, and implementation of sustainable drainage systems. And in relation to waste management, further details on the sustainable management of waste, including construction waste and household waste. So these changes are proposed for the final report that will go to executive unless otherwise amended during this meeting. So in terms of the consultation, the SEA regulations require Natural England, the Environment Agency, and Historic England to be consulted for a minimum of 5 weeks on the scope of and level of detail and the information to be included within the report. As there are many other organisations and individuals with an interest and understanding of the issues faced in the district who may also hold information on such topics, it's proposed that the SA and SEA scoping consultation document is consulted wider to harness the views of the public and organisations alongside the local plan scoping consultation. So 2 questions have therefore been added to the local plan scoping consultation, and these questions seeking comments on the content of the document and whether additional information should be included. So this consultation will be the same length and period as the local plan scoping consultation. However, the 3 statutory bodies would have the 5-week requirement in line with the legal requirements to respond to the consultation. Following consultation on the SA and SEA scoping document, the document will be updated where there is new relevant information or issues that have been identified within the document. The framework will then be used to develop the plan, refine alternatives, and assess the effects of the plan through testing the local plan proposals, policies, and site options. The SA and SEA will also identify and propose potential mitigations to ensure benefits are maximised, as well as proposing ways to measure and monitor the plan once adopted. A full SA and SEA report will be consulted upon when the local plan has evolved. This is likely to be alongside the proposed local plan consultation. So that summarises the key points of the document and the SEA scoping report. To summarise, this report is seeking approval on the content of the SEA and SEA scoping report, as well as approval to consult on the documents.
Thank you to the Principal Planning Officer, and thank you for such a comprehensive report, even though I did make a few comments. So opening up for any discussion or questions, Councillor Crystal.
Sorry, apologies. I've got sort of 3 pages of dense writing, which I made 3 days ago, so I've completely forgotten it. So I suppose my first question is on the recommendation, actually, which recommendation B, that we take this document and it's formally consulted upon with the Environment Agency, Historic England, and Natural England in accordance with statutory requirements. I suppose from being on DMC a few years back, I was kind of never struck by the value of consultation with the Environment Agency, Historic England, Natural England. I can't remember. Perhaps they were more forthcoming in response. Those 3 bodies, that's who we have to consult, presumably. We don't have other options like the water companies themselves. And presumably, if they come back and say, if the Environment Agency comes back and says, we're rather busy, just see our statutory recommendations, is there much that we can do? Or would I suppose we don't yet know what kind of response we're going to get if this is a new process. I don't know. I don't know what my question is. I suppose we can't ask anyone else, and we have to receive the responses from those bodies, whatever they are. I suppose, is that the question?
Yes, so those three bodies are listed within the regulations, so we have to consult with them. So this is actually something that's carried over from the previous local plan system. So they will be equipped with these responses and they'll be used to doing them. So they'll probably be looking for the same things that they would have previously. So, I mean, obviously we don't know what they might come back with. They might be too busy, but hopefully, I mean, some of our other colleagues have gone before us, so they might have the information that will be local to the Hertfordshire area. They might have more information that they can send across, but obviously we'll have to wait and see.
Can I just clarify, while we have to go to them because they're statutory, it doesn't preclude anybody else from, because we're making the information available, it doesn't preclude anybody else from making comments or consulting on it. So it's not that we don't consult anybody else, and it's that we have to do them three.
Thank you. Definitely prefer SA and SEA than SLA. That was a horrible one. Just to I suppose just a question, because I know water quality, water supply, quality of the water in the rivers is something that regularly comes up. It's come up here in this chamber. So with regards to those elements, what can residents and stakeholders, what sort of work can they expect will be done?
So we are planning to undertake a water cycle strategy. So that's the hope that we will do that. So that will look at, it will basically identify issues and solutions in the water cycle in the network, and hopefully create an evidence base that will inform future policies. And then we can look at that and see actually, will that work? And then the SA and SEA will test those policies to actually see if they make a positive impact for the environment. And if you look at the water section in that, it will look to test it against those objectives and actually try and get a positive outcome for that and have a positive impact to water quality.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Crystal, have you? Okay, opening up to the floor. Councillor Hoskin.
Yeah, there's mention in your in the introduction, and actually in that table you referred us to a green belt and brown belt, but there's no mention of grey belt in any of that SA and SEA documents. I just wondered the implications of that are what, because it's an emerging area, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think so. When policies will emerge in the local plan, they will be tested. But I think in terms of the SA and SEA, it focuses more on the sustainability aspect of things. So it will look at potentially where greenbelt land or anything comes forward. It will assess the sustainability of that without the policy on approach, if that makes sense. So basically, it will assess it with the policy off, and yeah, we'll test it against the objectives within the SA. That makes sense.
It does. I was just wondering the comparisons drawn in the 11.2. Grey belt is brown belt in preference to green belt, but is there a scale then where grey belt sits in that range?
So is that 11.2 the table?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so is this in the so on page 86? So land, soils, waste and resources.
Yes.
Okay, yes. So one of the objectives is to ensure the most efficient use of land, and that will look at the use of brownfield land compared to greenfield land. So when you look at that objective, when you test the policy, it would have a preferential treatment for brownfield land for the reasons outlined in the base in the individual chapters, because it shows a positive impact of brownfield land. So when you go to assess a policy, if it uses brownfield land, then it would likely have a positive outcome compared to a negative outcome, and that's how you use the framework to.
Sure, but does Grey Belt fit in that spectrum?
Yes, I guess so. It depends if it's previously developed and will fall under the brownfield land.
I think just to, is this, can't see what it's on or not. It's on. Yeah, so that's talking about brownfield land and greenfield land, and green belt land could be either of those things. I guess the green belt doesn't come in because the grey belt doesn't come in because it is green belt, and green belt can be brownfield or greenfield. So it's testing the brownfield or the greenfield land rather than green belt and non-green belt or green belt and grey belt. That makes sense. There's a distinction between the classification of land and the policy that defines the land.
Yeah.
Can I just throw back what my understanding was? The words that have been used is field, which means whether it's previously development land, which is brownfield, or greenfield, which is land that hasn't been developed. And that's been confused with greenbelt and grey belt, which is a different designation and is just there to stop the towns becoming conurbations, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, green belt and grey belt could be previously developed brownfield or greenfield.
Councillor Buckmaster.
That's very clear now. Thank you.
So.
Thanks, Chairman. There's a small section on education, and I was just thinking about a discussion we had at county today, and Ben will remember this, and it was about the fact that there are schools that have closed or are in danger of closing in rural areas, while at the same time we're going to be, through the Education Authority, talking about new schools in areas of growth. And the mind of members today was actually that there need to be more joined up thinking around that and looking at ways of protecting existing communities. Now, it could well be that this is for the Education Authority to respond to, but I just wondered whether there were any thoughts around that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, we're already talking with HCC education colleagues about this, and it will inform future thinking about strategy. So we're already, considering the position of community schools, whether they're needed, where growth might be, and it's a complicated area, but it's in our thinking in terms of the situations you've described there in your question. It will come to future meetings of DPEP when we start to talk about strategy, but we are waiting for education colleagues to come back and help to inform the strategy. It's one of the pieces of the jigsaw that the evidence that we're preparing at the moment will cover, and it's a case of putting all the bits of the evidence together to try and come up with the best strategy for the district and the communities in it.
Councillor Stowe.
I noticed on page 88 you talk about travelling show people, and you talk about Gilston having some sites, but you haven't mentioned east of Stevenage, which has got a site that's not been developed yet, and it's for travelling show people. Can you tell me if that will be done or not?
Have you got a reference in the document?
It's page 88, 3.111. It's heading as gypsies, travellers and travelling show people. My main comment really is that if we've got an existing site that's not been developed, I mean, we should be aware of that, and it should be mentioned surely. As another site. It was for a family at Rye House. That's what also made me comment, because that's the site you talk about being overcrowded.
Yeah, it's page 26 of the original document. Yeah, it's because you've got two sets of numbering on it. Do you want me to read it to you?
I assure you it wasn't a trick question. I was just interested, that's all.
So in terms of the East of Stevenage development, that has already been granted permission, full permission, for the residential development for the settled community. Now, while the policy that we have in the district plan allocates that area for travelling show people, and an area to the side of it, unfortunately, the Section 106 was not specific enough to tie down when that land would be delivered. So we haven't got anything that will ensure that that particular area is brought forward within any particular time period. So while it is still allocated for travelling show people, we haven't got the clause that we need to be able to specify the time that that would actually come forward. So the Gilston one is different because we have an up-to-date Section 106 that has been developed recently. The East of Stevenage development was granted permission several years ago now, and obviously there's been a steep learning curve since then. So we now know that the provisions of the Section 106 for Gilston will ensure the delivery in a timely manner, and it's all set out within that Section 106 clause.
Could I just ask though, it is of great concern to people because it's not been developed as a show people's place, because it would turn into a different usage.
The area of land is specifically shown within the plan on the Section 106 for use as travelling show people.
Any further questions? Councillor Crystal.
Okay, I'm ready. Sorry, bear with me. Apologies. So my first question is on page 81 of the pack. The top, it's table 1.2, proposed SEA objectives for population health and well-being. So that's page 81 or page 19, depending on which number you're using. And my question is about the last point in the decision-making questions. And I just, it says, is access to open space and leisure facilities provided / improved? And I suppose my question is, should we assume that there would be access to open space and leisure facilities? So I wonder just if the provided, and this is, it may seem petty, but I just wondered whether provided / improved kind of allows some wiggle room, which could end up meaning the difference between actually access being improved or leisure facilities being improved or just provided. Do you see what I mean?
I do. You want something a little bit more positive in the language.
Well, I wonder if is that possible? I just wonder if we can kind of demand a bit more. And I think there are a number of cases going through some of the tables where I wonder whether the wording could be, sometimes it's and or, and I wonder whether we can just sort of turn the crank a little bit more. I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I see what you mean. So you could be something along the lines of access to open spaces and leisure facilities improved, or improvements for, yeah.
I understand the improved or provided, because it may be that there's not currently an access, because we've had a couple of DM sites where you can't currently get from wherever they're building to a green space, and something has been provided to improve that, or to reroute a right of way so it doesn't go through a school site, for example. So I understand the intent of the wording, but is there, can we look at that maybe after the meeting and see if it can be tweaked?
We can look at it, but it might just be worth highlighting that the decision-making questions, so the table, I think it's 11.2, so the decision-making questions are part of the framework. So when you look at the policies and you look at, there's a, I think it's 11.1. Yes, so table 11.3, which gives the score, so it's on page 83 of the one that I'm looking at, it gives the score and impact. So when you use those decision-making policy, those decision-making questions, you would take an approach of, will that actually have a significant positive impact, or could it have a significant negative?
Okay.
So you use it and then determine the scale of how positive or negative that is.
Okay.
In that sense.
Okay. Yeah. No, I see that. Yes, I suppose. Yeah, and that's probably this one probably isn't a very good example, but I think I take your point. I do think that perhaps there may be some examples, and I'll point to another one in a second. I just wanted to jump to 88. Sorry, page 88. So page 88, which is section 3.2, future trends without implementation of a new local plan. And I just wanted to, I'm moving to a slightly different issue here. I just wanted to, this isn't a question, this is just a comment. I think section 3.2 is really, really important. I think it illustrates beautifully why we need a local plan. And I think if people are not sure why we need it, I would urge them to look at page 88, section 3.2, which I think explains very well the importance of a plan. That was just a comment on that. Okay, page 90 is my next one. Okay, so table 3.2 on page 90. This is another example, perhaps, of the wording, and again, maybe the details of the wording don't matter or don't have a huge impact. But the third question, does the proposal include enhanced water efficiency or energy standards? And I just wondered whether that question, having that or in there, we're saying, does it include, it's kind of suggests that if energy standards is fine, and if you've got energy standard improvements, you don't need water efficiency standard improvements. And I just wondered whether the wording perhaps shouldn't be all, or maybe they should be split out into two separate questions. I don't know. And you don't have to answer it now, but I would just leave it with you as a thought, and I'm sure Vicky will look at that.
We can look at that and make it two questions, so you look at them separately.
Maybe that would help prevent sort of I don't know.
Or just replace the two words with utility standards, because it covers all three.
Yeah,
Okay, yes, now, so last one, but I did say bear with me, apologies. Page, I think it's page 144, which is the scoring, which is this sort of positive, negative, it's the scoring, isn't it? The methodology for assessing policies. There's a significant positive, none or negligible, negative, significant, negative, or unknown. Is it just how are those? Is there any additive input? Are they added up in any way to make a decision, or are they taken as a you look at each item and then you give it a score? Is there an addition at any point which kind of looks at the positives and the negatives and creates a final score? Because it would seem with just those 5, you're not getting a very fine level of detail.
Yes, so they're not used to score it and give it like an actual number. They're used, so you could so an example is you could have a proposed policy and it would test it and give it a significant positive maybe or other a significant negative, and then you would have some sort of commentary around those policies and actually ways to improve it. So if something came out as a significant negative, is there any mitigation that could be put in place that actually would push up its score and actually improve the policy? So it's more like a visual, where can there be improvements, where is it lacking, but it doesn't add up.
You don't need the detail, the numbering. Okay, no, that's helpful. No, thank you very much. That's good. I'll stop there.
Any other questions from the floor before we move? Oh, okay. So would anybody like to propose that the council via the executive be advised that, subject to the publication of the notice to commence local plan preparation and the local plan timetable, the content of the SA/SEA scoping document at Appendix A is approved. Secondly, that the SA/SEA scoping document be formally consulted upon with the Environment Agency, Historic England and Natural England in accordance with statutory requirements. C, subject to the approval of the local plan scoping consultation, the SA/SEA scoping document will be made available alongside the local plan scoping consultation and will include a period of activity between June the 11th and July the 12th, 2026 through a range of different forums, including online on the council's website. And D, any minor amendments required to the content of the SA/SEA scoping document prior to the consultation period be delegated to the Director of Place in consultation with the Executive Member for Planning and Growth. Just before we do that, can I just check those dates are right and it is not July 10th? Is it July 10th?
It is July 10th, yes. That date does need amending, thank you.
Okay, so if we can have a proposal and second for that, and then we can propose the amendment, that would be great.
I'm happy to propose.
Thank you for seconding, Councillor Dumont. And then for the amendment to item C, between the period of activity between June the 11th and July 10th, 2026, can I have a proposer and a seconder?
Yeah, I'll propose that.
Happy to second.
So voting on the amendment, can I have an indication of those in favour? So the amendment is carried. And then in respect of the overall motion with the amendment, can I have an indication of those who are in favour? Thank you. So moving on to the East Herts LCWIP, the Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, which is on pages 184 to 811. So it is a bit of a weighty tome. Can I ask Kay Mead to sum that up in a few words, who is the Principal Planning Policy Officer, who will present the result report. Thanks, Kay.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, it is a lengthy tome, so apologies for all the wading through that folks will have had to do with this one. Local cycling and walking infrastructure plans, or LCWIPs for short, form a strategic approach to identifying cycling and walking improvements that are needed at a local level. They enable a long-term approach to developing local cycling and walking networks, which the government suggests should ideally be over a 10-year period. LCWIPs are being developed for each of the Hertfordshire districts and boroughs across the county, with the County Council, HCC, taking the lead, together with supporting consultants and working collaboratively with each district and borough to produce a document covering its area, while also considering potential cross-boundary links both within and outside the county. LCWIPs not only form part of the government strategy to increase the number of trips made on foot, cycle or by wheeling, they also allow greater access to potential funding streams, such as the Active Travel Fund. They also provide an excellent basis on which to inform active travel measures being sought through Section 106 agreements for where development proposals are brought forward, either through the strategic allocations or other planning applications. The East Herts LCWIP is a high-level document, clearly linking to other strategic planning documents, such as the Local Transport Plan. The main outputs achieved through the LCWIP are a report that sets out the underlying analysis, including the barriers and enablers for walking and cycling, and provides a narrative to support its identified improvements. A mapped network plans for walking and cycling that identify preferred routes, current and future travel patterns, and potential areas for further development, and a prioritised programme of infrastructure improvements for future investment. While the LCWIP covers the whole East Herts district, resources would unfortunately not allow the development of a full walking and cycling network to cover every location at this time. Therefore, at this stage, the LCWIP has mainly been restricted to cover the 5 main towns and the 8 settlements listed as Group 1 villages in Policy Vil 1 of the district plan and key linkages between them. However, it should be noted that this does not preclude coverage being extended to other areas in the future. The joint partnership initiative between HCC and this council has seen the work underpinned by extensive community involvement through interaction with key stakeholder groups and 2 separate strands of public engagement and consultation periods. Each individual comment received was considered and evaluated jointly by officers of both East Herts and HCC through an excellent working relationship. This process has ensured that the final LCWIP has had the benefit of greater local knowledge input at an earlier stage, in addition to the professional technical expertise provided by HCC. While the LCWIP has taken longer to finalise than originally envisaged, its later production actually has 2 key benefits. Firstly, although the introduction of the public engagement phase was an additional strand of consulting the public to that which had previously been carried out in other LCWIPs across the county, the huge level of response received, that was around 1,300 comments, was invaluable in informing the development of the walking and cycling networks at an important stage. This allowed for additional schemes to be investigated and appraised before finalisation of the primary, secondary and prioritised networks, and means that the final LCWIP is considered to be a more robust output than would previously have been possible. Secondly, as mentioned in earlier reports this evening, the emerging new local plan, which would take the place of the current adopted district plan, will require a number of supporting technical documents to form part of its evidence base. The East Herts Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan is one of those documents. The later than first planned adoption date will mean that it will be a more recently produced document when it reaches that examination stage and thus more up to date as evidence. The full suite of documents forming the intended final LCWIP is available at Appendix E and F 1 to 7 to the panel report. Background documents relating to the 2025 public consultation, including consideration of the issues raised and appropriate changes made to the networks and text, are to be found at Appendices A through C, with a track changes version of the final LCWIP document at Appendix D, so changes between the public consultation and final versions can be easily understood. Members are invited to agree the recommendations at the head of the report.
Thank you. And given that we cover 1/3 of Hertfordshire and there are 10 districts, this was an absolutely massive undertaking, notwithstanding the fact that we got over double the number of comments and feedbacks from people than any of the other districts. So a massive response on it, which has been testament, I think, to how well members and the planning team and also HCC have publicised this and consulted on it. And I'd like to thank the Principal Planning Officer and the rest of the team for all the hard work on this one, because it has been an absolute biggie, as can be told by the number of pages in it. So thank you, guys. Comments, questions?
Comment, I suppose. I know a huge amount of work has gone into this, and as the chair said, huge amount of response. And look, I get the purpose of it. Creates a long-term evidence base. It helps us with funding. The process has taken a long time, I suppose as someone who commutes to work, it's just frustrating when you see these wonderful plans, but the potholes seem to appear quicker than the words on the paper, and the river towpath is becoming more like the cobblestones of Roubaix every day, and makes it more difficult to commute. So I just wish that perhaps policy at a national level really dictated that these things need to be put in place. This funding needs to be put in place, so that we can have cycle paths and networks. I'm speaking more from that point of view, but I'm sure there are equal arguments from the walking point of view as well, to make it easy for people, because if you build it, they'll come. I really believe that. So yeah, it's not a criticism of the plan or the work that's been done. It's just a frustration that this work goes into it, but not a lot seems to change out there.
Well, hopefully once it's adopted, that will give us the leverage to apply for funding mechanisms and, to approach developers as well. So, we've got more chance of getting these things resolved with it in place than we would if we didn't have one. So, and also the towpath between Hertford and Ware and beyond towards Stabberts and St Margaret's is one of the areas that is highlighted. So fingers crossed for that one going forward.
And I suppose I would just say as well, if you look at, people often quote Holland as the place that we should be looking to, and a great example. It's actually it's more recent than people realise as to how cycling's been adopted over there. And there was a lot of objection to that to start with. It wasn't just a natural thing. This was local authorities and governments planning specifically to make that modal shift, and it worked. So from that point of view, these things are positive. Just wish it'd hurry up a bit, that's all.
I agree. Councillor Crystal.
Yeah, thanks very much. And I echo exactly what you say, Joe. I think that the fantastic response that we had to the consultation is testament to your work and to all the people in East Herts who really care about cycling and walking, and that's wonderful. But of course, it's created a huge level of expectation that suddenly we've got this wonderful document and we're going to be putting all of these fantastic routes into place, and the frustration is that we just don't have the funding immediately, and so it's one of these messages where members, I suppose, have to be very clear about highlighting how important this document is as part of the district local plan, but for all of those other development potentials, and just sort of manage expectation in all of those cycling groups and walkers who really want to see this very passionately. So yeah, I'm really pleased it's here, and yeah, I'm just excited to see what it brings next.
Any questions from the floor? Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, I've a query here on page 7 of your report, page 229 of our pack. You've got changes to network mapping, and under you have settlement and then location if known. At the very bottom one, 30148, you've got Bishop Stortford, Bonks Hill. Well, it's actually Sawbridgeworth. So I'm asking, should it be changed, or are we suddenly part of Bishop Stortford?
Sorry, obviously not. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Sorry, it's page 229 and it's 30. Yeah, there's obviously been a typo there. Thank you very much for bringing it. If it's 30148. So lovely. Thank you very much. We'll get that rectified before it goes on further. Thank you for that.
Councillor Hoskin.
I think it's building on Joe and Ben's point. It's sobering that within here there's a rather yellowed version of the Sustrans report in 1994. So here we are, nearly 30 years later, and we're still pushing the same routes apparently. There has been some development, and you can see some of them have been achieved, but we really don't want to be in a position 30 years from now where we're looking back at a yellow version of the LC whip and wondering what on earth we did in the meanwhile.
So obviously that's our aim also. It is, as you say, disappointing that only a few of the schemes within that have come to fruition, but I would say that the environment now, in terms of active travel, walking, cycling, and wheeling for those that are unable to, walk or cycle, the impetus from government and, just generally people's views on bringing it forward is so much more now than it was back then. Back then, we were still sort of championing cars, and car-borne traffic was the primary method of getting around. Now we're looking far more on how people can move actively between. So I think having this policy in place is actually got, the levers to apply for specific funding streams that weren't in existence then. And the, as I say, the priority that this council puts on it, and Hertfordshire County Council as well, in terms of its current LTP4 priority in Policy 1, the way that the active travel is prioritised over other motorised means that we've got far more leverage coming into negotiations with developers and getting more things provided on the ground than we did back in the 90s. So fingers crossed that going forward more will get implemented sooner.
Any further questions? Okay. Oh, Councillor Buckmaster.
Yeah, and only just, yeah, I've been heavily involved with this locally and obviously in my county role as well. And I commissioned a report as far back as 2017 to look at walking and cycling infrastructure around Sawbridge Worth. I guess my only concern is these are to a certain extent aspirational. They can be used in any planning documents and considerations, and any government funding that may come through to encourage walking and cycling. And it's an evidence base to say to government, yes, this is what we can do with the funding. I suppose in terms of planning applications, my concern is developers are always looking at viability and want to keep everything within their red line, and don't always look at what's happening in the next village. And that's a shame, because actually, I think some of you know all about the Gilston development, and there are potentials to then improve connectivity between a whole series of villages, between probably New Village 7 and all the way through to Ware North, if things are done correctly. But it's a question as to whether or not the funding will come through.
Noted.
Just to comment on that, obviously, we've got these new developments coming forward, and we've got aspirational routes already identified, but future iterations as these developments, come into being, future iterations of the LCWIP can then encompass further works and further routes. And I think that's another key thing, that it's not just a static document. Other areas, such as North Herts, are now looking more at their rural areas. So we can carry on working on the LCWIP in due course to, add improvements to it. It's also been brought to my attention that in addition to Councillor Ruth Buckmaster's note of the slight error that has been picked up with Sawbridge Worth not being Bishop Stortford, we've had another little gremlin brought to our attention as well, that actually Rush Green Hertford is also not in Bishop Stortford. So that one on page 230, the representation 30105 will also need to be amended on that table prior to going forward to executive. We'll get that sorted.
Thank you, but these were consultee comments, weren't they? But I suspect they didn't get, they might have got Sawbridge Worth and Bishop Stortford mixed up, but not.
No, the responses won't have been mixed up, but it's just the transposing of, there were lots of tables that were the working copies, and they were then being transposed over into the copies that you see here. And I think there's a couple of gremlins sneaked in, but apologies for that.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, then I will move on to ask for a proposal for that the district, that the executive be advised that A, the East Herts Local Walking and Cycling Infrastructure Plan, the LC WIP, attached as appendices E and F, brackets 1 to 7, be agreed as part of the evidence base to inform the new East Herts Local Plan and as a material consideration for development management purposes in the determination of planning applications, and B, any minor amendments to the content of the East Herts Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan, LC WIP, be delegated to the Director of Place in consultation with the Executive Member for Planning and Growth. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Councillor Demont.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Okay, voting, those for the motion? Unanimous. I'm going to propose that we have a 5-minute comfort break and come back at 8:30. Can somebody second me, please? Thank you, Councillor Crystal. And those for? Passed. Okay, so welcome back everybody, and if we can move on to item 9 of the agenda, which is the East Herts Open Space Assessment, which is on pages 812 to 951 of the report. And if I could ask Laura Guy, Principal Planning Policy Officer, to present the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Open Space Assessment provides an updated, robust evidence base to support. Sorry, let me just turn my sound off. To support the new local plan and development management decisions, replacing the previous 2017 study. National planning policy requires that local plans are underpinned by robust, up-to-date assessments of open space, sport and recreation. Public open space provides a range of social, cultural and environmental benefits, so it is important for the Council to know what provision currently exists and to understand what the priorities and requirements are for the future. Population growth and changes to the open space provision have taken place since the last assessment. Most notably, recent housing developments have delivered new open spaces and continue to do so, and have also funded enhancements to existing provision. The updated assessment undertaken by consultants Knight, Kavanagh and Page, KKP, provides a comprehensive audit of over 570 publicly accessible open spaces across East Herts. It evaluates quantity, quality and accessibility across 6 open space typologies, supported by site visits, stakeholder engagement and consultation with town and parish councils. The findings show that there is approximately 1,680 hectares of public open space in East Herts, and whilst there are shortfalls and gaps in provision, generally the local community has access to a wide range of good quality open space. Sites have been categorised based on their primary function for the purposes of the assessment, but in practice it is important to recognise that open spaces are often multifunctional, particularly in terms of amenity green space, natural green space and parks and gardens. Where appropriate, the assessment identifies where gaps in provision may be served by other forms of open spaces. Building on the audit assessment, the study identifies a series of recommendations, including the retention of existing open space provision standards, which are consistent or higher with national benchmarks, as summarised in paragraphs 3.9 and 3.10 of this report. These findings will play a central role in shaping emerging policy and allocations in the new local plan, informing decisions on the protection of existing open spaces, identifying areas of deficiency, and guiding new provision and enhancement priorities. When read alongside related evidence, such as the Local Nature Recovery Strategy, the Playing Pitch and Outdoor Sports Strategy, and the Hertfordshire Green Infrastructure Strategy, the assessment will help ensure that green infrastructure is planned as a coherent, multifunctional network across the district. The report therefore asks members to agree that the open space assessment attached at Appendix A becomes part of the local plan evidence base and is used as a material consideration in development management decisions.
Thank you, Principal Planning Officer and team, for presenting this report. Much appreciated. Councillor Crystal.
Thanks very much. Thank you very much for the report. It's really interesting reading. It's a lot of numbers, but it is actually when you start to think about what it means to residents. And I was particularly struck by table 4.6, the summary on page 857, which sort of highlights the fact that Ware only has a provision of 0.05 hectares per thousand versus versus Hertford and Buntingford and Bishop Stortford, which are all much higher. So it's striking how under-provisioned Ware is, which I think which is it's important to highlight those differences. I've got some. I'm hopefully a bit more coherent on this item. Page 8. So I was looking at page 853. Well, that's the start of the section on the open spaces. I noticed we don't have the community garden in Bengio included, or community garden areas in Pinehurst, and there are probably reasons. I'm guessing that this was completed a while ago and before perhaps before the community garden in Benjo was completed or sort of set up. Is this a live document that will be updated as more gardens come in, or sorry, as more public open space comes in, or is this sort of locked?
Yeah, the reason the garden wasn't in was because of the threshold was sort of 0.2 hectares and it was just under it. However, that is, you know, it's still recognised that that is an important, you know, valuable area. But yeah, I think it's important, actually, it's a good point just to mention that, as I said, there's developments coming forward in East Herts and there's a sort of continuous change in open space. So I think this is effectively does have an element of being a live document. So as we go through the consultation process, the idea is that the GIS layers that sort of accompany this document will be accessible to the public, and they'll be able to sort of have a look at it, and will effectively be able to sort of add new open spaces that appear and reflect sort of local feedback.
Apologies, I've missed that limit, that area limit. A couple more questions. Page 8, I've got 889, 7.4. That's right. Yes, page 889, which is page 58. 7.4. The first paragraph on page 889. It mentions Benjo Parish Council. And I don't think there is a Benjo Parish Council, is there? It could be Hertford Parish Council, Hertford Town Council, or somewhere else. Yeah, it was just a question. It's on the second paragraph down.
Yes, I will check that.
Yeah.
That could just be a typo.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Thank you.
I'm sure it is. It's very minor. And on page 917. It's the royal we, which is open space assessment, page 917 or 86. There is Castle Gardens, number 83, and then Castle Park, 84. Are they both Bishop Stortford, parts of Bishop Stortford?
Apologies, what?
Sorry, yeah. Page 917. Yeah.
No, Castle Park is in Bishop Stortford, and Castle Gardens is Hertford.
Oh, okay, that's great. That's because I was going to say otherwise
confusing.
we'd be missing. Yeah, Castle Gardens in Hertford. That's my comments. Yeah, thank you very much.
Can I just jump in? We think it might be Benjo Rural Parish Council. Yeah, there is, according to our website. And Councillor Holt is nodding his head with a knowing smile. So I think that might clear the mystery up. We've just missed out the word rural.
Which is there a particular village it's centred on?
It is Tunnel and Chatmore.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Okay. Any comments or questions, Councillor Dumont, before I move on to the opening the floor?
No, nothing major really. I suppose I did want to ask about Rye Meads, because that's mentioned in there as an area of special. It's a special protection area. Are you aware that there's been some news recently with regards to the RPSB, if I get that right? RSPB, thank you. Is basically pulling out and handing over management to Thames Water. I wonder if that's something that you're aware of.
No, I wasn't. I mean, I think its designation would still be sort of European significance. So it would still, you know, it wouldn't change its inclusion in here. But that's useful information that will make sure we sort of reflect in the sort of background documents. Thank you.
Any questions from the floor? Councillor Stowe.
It's just a comment really on the Datchworth. You've got the Datchworth Green, which is quite a large area, but it's also another very large area that you've missed out, which is the recreation ground. It's the old Turkey Farm recreation ground in Brookbridge Lane, which was left to the parish council in the Section 52 agreement many years ago.
Okay, yeah, we can check that. It may be that it was included. Is it a playing field?
Well,
I
no,
think-
it's allotments, it's a football pitch, it's lots of play equipment for children different ages. It's got table tennis concrete table tennis table there for adults as well.
It may be that sometimes if KKP didn't know its sort of local name, it may be they've given it a name that's
I've
linked
looked
to the
through it, I
road.
can't see anything.
Okay, I'll have a look at that though.
All right,
Yeah, make
thank you.
sure. Yeah.
Councillor Buckmaster.
Thank you, Chairman. This is mainly about publicly accessible parks and open spaces and not sports. That will be a separate report and provision, although some could be counted as both. I'm sensing also within here there are some private owned pieces of land that may have been included in the local nature recovery strategy. Is that why they are there? Do we know?
So basically, I think if they have been included, there's been KKP have done some sort of research and decided they were publicly accessible. If they've been included incorrectly, we could have a look at that. But the idea is that they have to be, they're not necessarily all owned by parish councils or East Herts. They are a sort of a range of different spaces that are sort of publicly accessible beyond just a permitted footpath. So that's how the sort of basis has been determined.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, team leader.
I don't have a question. But the mentioning of the GIS layer and the interactiveness and the fluid and the updating of data, etc., just gives me the opportunity to introduce another member of the team who isn't presenting a paper, but it is a new member of the team who is our GIS officer, Charlotte at the back there. So we do have a resource in the team that will be looking at digital innovation, GIS layers, how data is used, how it's viewed by the public and by officers. And that's a key part of the consultation that will carry forward through the plan. So if there's any form of digital innovation that members wish to see in the way we consult, it would be good to know, and we can look into that. Now we have a resource in the team dedicated to that purpose.
And it's really good that we're moving online and not, I know when we did the call for sites, those were all put in directly rather than people sending in bits of paper which were then mapped, as was done for the 2018 plan. So it's great to see digital technology reducing down the time and also providing greater accessibility. So welcome on board, Charlotte. Nice to meet you. Okay, then at this point, I would like to ask for proposals that the executive be advised that the open space assessment attached as Appendix A be agreed as part of the evidence base to inform the new East Herts local plan and as a material consideration for development management purposes in the determination of planning applications.
Happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Chisholm.
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dumont. Those in favour? Moving on to item 10, the East Herts district-wide employment land review, which is pages 952 to 1088. And I will ask Richard Crutchley, the team leader for planning policy, to present the report. Thank you.
I'm going to pass this on to Anthony to lead on this one.
Thank you, Anthony. And I believe this is your first presentation, so good luck and nice to hear from you.
Thank you very much. So the Employment Land Review, also referred to as the ELR, is an assessment of the district's allocated employment areas, which has been undertaken in order to inform the preparation of the new local plan, contributing toward the National Planning Policy Framework requirement for the preparation and review of all policies to be underpinned by relevant and up-to-date evidence. Among the evidence which is needed to be updating is that relating to employment and the economy, including the ELR, which is important for understanding business trends and the existing stock of employment land within the district. The last ELR was undertaken by Halcro in 2013 and is therefore now 13 years out of date. In this time, national planning policy context and the classification of use classes has evolved. Major societal changes, including the COVID pandemic and Brexit, have impacted how business and industry operates. And many of the district's allocated employment sites have changed significantly. This updated ELR therefore aims to capture and consider those changes. As outlined in the methodology, this review assesses all 33 of the district's established employment areas, which are allocated for industry in accordance with policy ED1 of the District Plan 2018. In addition, the new Thorley Fields Business Park in Bishop Stortford is assessed as a new employment area, having been delivered under a master plan framework in accordance with District Plan Policy BISH 5. All assessments for all of these sites have been conducted through a combination of in-person site visits and desk-based research. The bulk of the review is made up by the employment land assessments within Chapter 4, which are broken up into the main settlements followed by the village sites. Each settlement subchapter consolidates individual site assessment information to provide overviews of the stock of employment land and any significant changes which have occurred. Overviews of each settlement and the villages are respectively followed by more in-depth assessments of each individual employment area presented through site assessment tables, which highlight things including site quality, notable planning history, character of the surrounding area, occupancy, constraints related to the site, accessibility, and what sort of businesses are operating from each site, classified by use class. These assessments are effectively a detailed audit of how the district's allocated employment areas are being used, how this has changed since the last ELR in 2013, and the extent to which they're serving their employment function. The ELR then sets out site-specific conclusions and recommendations in Chapter 5, which are again broken up by settlement. This chapter is informed by the evaluation in the previous chapter and essentially suggests how each site should be considered moving forward. To broadly summarise, there are three main types of recommendations that are made. Firstly, where employment areas continue to serve their function of providing employment generating floor space and accommodating industry, as is the case for the majority of sites, it's recommended that they are safeguarded for employment use through the new local plan. Secondly, where land within allocated employment areas has been redeveloped or has been lost to non-employment land uses, it's recommended that the allocation is amended to reflect this by excluding said land. And thirdly, where an employment area has expanded beyond its current allocation, providing additional employment land, it's recommended that the allocation is amended to reflect this by incorporating said land. These recommendations are then presented as overlays on aerial maps in order to visualise where employment land has been lost or gained. Overall, the recommended amendments to the district's employment area allocations, based upon how each site has evolved, reflects a net loss of approximately 6.2 hectares of allocated employment land. The most significant loss comes at Mead Lane in Hertford, where approximately 4.6 hectares of the allocated site is being redeveloped for mixed residential use under the Hart 2 Master Plan framework, while the most significant gain is at the new Thorley Fields Business Park in Bishop Stortford, which provides approximately 3.3 hectares of new employment land. Other notable updates include recent redevelopment of employment land at Caxton Hill in Hertford, delivering the new Hertford Logistics Hub, and the vacancy of County Hall just up the road following the relocation of Hertfordshire County Council, who previously occupied the site and were up until recently the district's largest public sector employer. More broadly, assessment of the district's employment areas has revealed a growing trend of non-industrial use class E businesses being located within traditionally industrial settings following the 2020 amendments to the use class order. This includes things like shops, gyms, food and drink establishments, and various servicing businesses. The ELR was supported by consultation with planning officers where necessary, for example, where examining relevant planning history or background information pertaining to a site. Site assessment information was also shared with consultants at AECOM who have been working on related employment studies for each of the district's main settlements. And though the preparation of the ELR has not involved public consultation, it will be made available on the Council's website in due course alongside other background evidence work. Going forward, it's hoped that the employment land review will be agreed as part of the evidence base to inform the new East Herts local plan and as material consideration for development management purposes and the determination of planning applications.
Thank you, Assistant Planning Policy Officer. That's much appreciated. And thank you to everybody for the hard work on putting this one together, because I know it's taken quite a bit of logistical input. Comments, questions?
Just a comment, I suppose, just, yeah, to say to the officers, Anthony, did you do the work on this, or the bulk of the work?
Mostly with obviously a lot of help from colleagues and other officers. Yeah,
it's a big bit of work. I can imagine it's very fiddly as well. So yeah, well done for that. Updating since 2013, how much has changed since then? You know, in terms of how we work, where we work. So yeah, just a comment on that really, but no questions at the moment.
Councillor Crystal.
Thanks. Yeah, likewise. Thanks very much for the work. You know, perhaps a dry title, but actually, again, I found it really interesting. I suppose my question is, so my understanding is that we've seen a slow nibbling away of employment land for various reasons. Is there anything in the MPPF, in the new MPPF, which sort of counteracts that in any way? I mean, I'm not sure, you know, what's the balance between housing and employment land? Is there anything that sort of slows that or changes that situation where we see where we will continue, or will we continue to see a nibbling away of employment land? Anyone, any idea at all?
It's a good question. I'm not as familiar with the new MPPF as maybe some of my colleagues, but I can say that with regards to the district plan, the 2018 district plan, there is, you know, caveats in policy ED1 that explain that any loss of employment land must demonstrate, you know, certain factors which demonstrates that they've been through a process of proving that employment land cannot be provided and replicated through new development. And yeah, although recommendations are made to safeguard land, it's entirely possible that land does get lost to non-employment uses.
Yes, Principal Planning Officer.
Yeah, just to add to that, really, I think it is a real challenge for sort of planning policy with the changes to the use class. Whereas previously we'd have seen the planning applications, there now is that sort of inbuilt flexibility, which I think still exists in the sort of new version of the MPPF. But equally, it's that balance, housing and strong economic growth. So I think it is definitely a challenge we'll have to sort of grapple with moving forward.
But I think as well, there's been a change in working patterns, particularly around commercial offices, where you may not have the one desk per person anymore because of hybrid working. So therefore, you're going to constrict some of the employment land as a result.
I would also just add to that with a lot of the land which is included in that net loss, that 6.6 hectares of loss, much of that is land which was not developed for employment uses. It was vacant land which was allocated for employment use, but has since come forward to residential use or other uses.
Any questions from the floor? Okay, so I will ask for proposals that the executive be advised that the employment land review attached as Appendix A be agreed as part of the evidence base to inform the new East Herts local plan and as a material consideration in the determination of planning applications. Proposer. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Demont.
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Those in favour? Yes, sorry, on the wrong page. Moving on to item 11, the Bishop Stortford Employment Study, which is pages 1089 to 1175. And I will hand over to Laura Guy the Principal Planning Officer to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, continuing with the theme of employment, Bishop Stortford Employment Study provides an updated assessment of the employment market in the town and makes recommendations about the types of jobs and employment land likely to be required. It is the second in a series of employment studies for the towns in East Herts. Members may remember that the Buntingford Employment Study was brought before Executive last year, and assessments for Hertford and Ware and Sawbridgeworth will follow next month. Using desktop research, officers' employment site visits, as Anthony just introduced, and feedback from local market agents, the Council commissioned consultants ACOM to produce the study, updating a previous document published in 2013. Since the last study, there have been changes to the town's employment sectors, as we've discussed, including new development, societal changes caused by COVID and Brexit, and an overhaul to the use class order. Therefore, the Bishop Stortford Employment Study considers a range of factors, including the town's socio-economic profile, the performance of its office and industrial markets, the role and condition of existing employment sites, and the potential for future employment development. The study also takes account of wider influences, including changes to working patterns, economic trends, and the strategic role of Stansted Airport. Importantly, the study identifies that Bishop Stortford has experienced significant recent growth, with further housing and employment development still to come forward. In this context, ensuring an appropriate balance between homes and jobs will be critical to delivering sustainable development and supporting the local economy moving forward. The evidence shows that while demand for office space is currently more limited, there is a clear and ongoing need for industrial and logistics space, with relatively low vacancy rates indicating constrained supply. The study therefore highlights the importance of safeguarding existing employment land, supporting the delivery of new employment floor space, and considering the potential need for additional provision in the future. When considered alongside other studies within the evidence base, including a future district-wide employment demand assessment and the land supply work that we've already mentioned, the SLAR, this study will effectively support decisions about the future economic strategy for Bishop Stortford. Therefore, this report asks members to agree that the study becomes part of the evidence base for the new local plan and is a material consideration in the determination of planning applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Planning Officer. And I want to say one of the things that I found quite useful from this and quite interesting was that the 3 sites that are already under construction, Bishop Stortford North, Old River Lane, which is in for planning permission, and also the goods yard, provide good mixed use developments. You know, we've got the good mix of housing and employment land rather than the more traditional absolutely separate and encouraging commuting. So that was good. And thank you very much for the work on the report. Comments, questions?
Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, again, really interesting. I haven't got any questions. I think the only comment I would make was the last figure 5.2, which is the office property vacancy rate, and on page 1133, I think, yeah, 1133, or page 32. The trends look perfectly normal until last year, and this is for East Herts. Until I realised, of course, that was County Hall closing, and it just shows how significant that was as an employer, or county is as an employer. But obviously it's shifted out of the district. Yeah, just in case anyone was wondering what that sharp, it does say in the text.
Yeah, we had exactly the same reaction when we saw that, and yeah,
Yeah.
worked out it was County Hall.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Councillor Dumont?
Yeah, no questions or specific comments, just as Ben said, really, the keeping good work gone into this, and happy to support it being used as the evidence base.
Great. Any questions from the floor? Comments? Councillor Swainston?
Thank you. I'm just interested interested to know whether you worked with county on this, because I remember going to a presentation at county and they aren't really considering Bishop Stortford for more employment, because they see most of the employment coming from outside of Bishop Stortford. So lots of residents, they've got jobs in the innovation corridor, they've got jobs at Stansted, etc., etc. So I just wondered if there was any.
Oh, no, we didn't work directly with the county with this, although as Richard mentioned, we are working with the county generally in terms of the sort of development of the new local plan. We did take account of the Hertfordshire Economic Strategy, which has recently been published, which obviously covers the whole of the county. I think, yeah, the study does recognise that obviously there is sort of out-commuting out of Bishop Stortford, and there's a particular growth around Stansted. But I think the work the consultant's done has sort of shown that even within that, potentially, I mean, we talked about AI earlier, and one of the sort of drivers in the Hertfordshire Economic Strategy is about the sort of potential for growth of AI in the county, and potentially, I know there's been some to the south of Hertfordshire already, and potentially, you know, it's not clear yet whether Bishop Stortford has that sort of land, you know, availability or the proximity to the M25 to do that. But I think there was a clear evidence that it's sort of positioned next to the M11, and particularly from the industrial sector, that there was quite an interest, and that was particularly reflected in sort of discussions with some of the agents as well. But yeah, I think it is one of those things that will evolve, and it'll be interesting to sort of work with the county moving forward, to see how, you know, we can progress the sort of economic strategy for Bishop Stortford as part of the local plan.
Any further questions? Okay. Oh, Councillor Crystal.
Yes, I just wondered, I know we did the call for sites. Can you remind me, were industrial sites included in that, or were they not? I know green space sort of was, but
it was open to all sites, but I don't recall whether or not we had any industrial land put forward.
I think I don't recall any sites that are exclusively put forward for industrial use, but some sites, including existing employment areas which were promoted, included potential for mixed development that would, in theory, incorporate some continuing employment uses.
And I'd like to say I'm pleased to hear that, because I'm a great fan of the 20-minute neighbourhood, although we'll probably get a deluge of emails writing in about permits being required for people to leave their homes and all the rest of it. So thank you. Any further questions?
Again, not a question.
No, I didn't think it would be.
Whispered to me that we can recall at least one site that we think was employment only, and that's the one west of the A10, where the old landfill site there, which I think was put in for employment. There may be others, but there were 283. So we can come back and check if you like.
no, it was. Don't go. Don't do any extra work for my question. I'll find out in due course, though. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to look for proposers and seconders for the motion that the executive be advised that the Bishop Stortford employment study attached as Appendix A to the papers be agreed as part of the evidence base to inform the new East Herts local plan and as a material consideration for development management purposes in the determination of planning applications.
Happy to propose.
Thank you, Councillor Crystal. Thank you, Councillor Dumont. Those in favour? Passed. There is item 12, urgent business. There are no urgent items, and so that concludes tonight's meeting at Oh, 9:05. And just for clarity, there was no exclusion of the press and public required because it is an agenda item.